Sorry. Welcome to Relevant Tones. I'm Seth Bosted. I'm going to try to get this timer to stop going. We are streaming live from Caveat in Manhattan. I am really excited about tonight for several reasons, not least of which we've got a great program. Got this mammoth marimba here. Going to hear a string quartet later, some clarinet music, fabulous music inspired by astrology, which is the theme for tonight. But I'm also excited because this is a new venture. This is Relevant Tones 2.0, launching it now in a new format as a live stream show. This is the first time I've ever broadcast with live stream as the exclusive broadcast medium, which is really exciting. So very happy about that. My idea for this new format for Relevant Tones was to, well, it's a little nerdy, to take a big conversation, have really get into it, talk about things that are affecting all of us as human beings, but especially creative people and especially composers, especially living composers, because Relevant Tones focuses on the music of today. So the premise of the show is art doesn't happen in a vacuum. We're going to talk about a lot of things that are happening out there and how that impacts music that's being created today. And then we're going to hear some of that music. So I'm really excited to have these special guests tonight, expert astrologers Rebecca Gordon and Samuel F. Reynolds. Thanks so much for coming. You guys grab your mics. Yeah, there's one there on your right, Rebecca. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about this, but let's get to know both of you a little bit first. I assume that when you were kids, you weren't thinking, I'm going to grow up to be a professional astrologer. I don't recall that being an option at career day in elementary school. So let's start with you, Sam. Just 1 minute. How did you get into astrology?
Trying to disprove it, actually.
Oh, okay.
So this was my most successful failure. So I actually got into it after seeing an astrologer. And I was blown away by what he had to say, but I thought it was all a trick. So I spent 10 years researching and looking at charts and looking at what astrology was made of and thinking about it before I decided that I wanted to be an astrologer. So I had to actually vet it first because it didn't make any sense to me.
Mm-hmm. And we'll talk a little bit more about what you really specifically got into. And Rebecca, how about you?
So I actually started off with an interest in astronomy, not astrology. So as a kid, I actually kind of did want to be an astronomer. And my favorite place was the Hayden Planetarium to go back then. Anyway, I discovered astrology at about age 14. Found a book on a neighbor's shelf. That woman that was my neighbor soon became my stepmother, and my stepmother then became my astrology mentor, and we studied weekly. At first, similar to Sam, I was like, wait, I like astronomy. What is this mumbo jumbo? And similarly, I tried to prove it wrong. I was like, how can this be? And the more I looked into it, the more compelling it became. It completely took me in awe and captured my life. So here we are.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I had, or have, several dozen themes for different Relevant Tones episodes. I chose astrology for this one after reading an article in The New Yorker, which was a pretty interesting article where they were saying that astrology is right now experiencing a boom in popularity. There's more mainstream acceptance of astrology than there has been since like the 1970s. People are talking about it openly during the day. So what do you think is, why do you think there is this uptick of popularity? This is for either of you.
Okay. As you say that, there's 3 reasons that come up. The first one would be the democratization of astrology because of the internet and social media, whereas all these people that used to be interested in it, maybe in corporate, were hiding it in their cubicles, their horoscope magazines, and things like that. And now with Instagram, there's so many people sharing it freely, and everybody can get out of the closet, so to speak, and it's sort of more openly accepted, as well as just overall spirituality is in self-realization studies as well are becoming more mainstream, I believe. So that's a wonderful thing. People are becoming more interested in why we are here, what we are doing. The second reason is actually something astrological. And Sam, you're going to know what I'm talking about with this. The planet Neptune, which pretty much rules pretty much how we see God at any time, how we find spirit. And Neptune is in the sign of Pisces right now, so it's as if the floodgates are open, and people have been more open than ever. This is a 14-year cycle we're in the middle of it right now. The last time it happened was in the 1840s, 1850s, and that was a huge rise in spirituality across the world. And so we're seeing that come up again right now.
So when you say people are open, that's what you mean? People are open to more spiritual concepts?
Yeah, I mean, back in the 1840s and 50s, there was this big trend of seances and the spiritualist church that came up in upstate New York and all over the globe. There was these bubbling, simmering bits of different versions of ways of connecting to spirit, and astrology being one of them. Now it's having that same cycle is reoccurring right now. And astrology is basically pattern recognition. So this is another pattern that's reoccurring right now. And the last reason that I would say is meaning. You know, I always imagine, like, if there was a grocery store at the end of the world, what people really desire is meaning. Why are we here? What are we doing on this planet? And now more than ever, when there's so many questions, when we look at our politics and whole global situation, we question, what is this about? What is this existence? Why are we here? And as situations can become more tenuous, the quest for meaning becomes heightened. And that's also, I think, a factor. So I know Sam has something else interesting we discussed today, too.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, I mean, one other thing I'll add is that it's an astrological factor. I would say that a particular set of people born probably in the late 80s under the auspices of the time when Uranus was in Sagittarius, they've come of age where they want to broaden their horizons, both in terms of philosophically and also spiritually, like Rebecca was talking about. And I think what comes with that is just being open, and being open to what other possibilities rather than just what's termed by religion or what's termed by science. And so they want to kind of find a different way of looking at that. Piggybacking off of that thought, I think we also have a number of people who haven't found a home philosophically or identity-wise through astrology without some other aspects of judgment. You know, there's been judgment from the scientific community at one point for those who are LGBTQ, right? And so there's also been that from the religious community. In astrology, you can just be an Aries, right? Or a Virgo, and not worried about someone kind of stigmatizing you or stymieing you from a particular angle. Now, some people are concerned about that, and they say, like, oh, well, that can lead to another kind of discrimination. Well, let me tell you, there are more people who have been lynched for being black than being a Libra. So
that's undeniably true. I hope,
and I think, and race is just as tenuous as a concept as a zodiac.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can talk about that. It's interesting. There's a thing in the New Yorker article too that, like, I mean, some millennials are, you know, refusing to date certain signs or canceling,
right,
so to speak, certain signs. Just, you know, only knowing their sun sign, they're like, well, I'm not going to like you. I'm going to just save myself some time and trouble here.
Right.
Which seems a little irresponsible, but
it is.
Agreed.
And I agree. I mean, I think most astrologers would agree because they're just taking one little sample of information and ballooning it out of too much.
All right, let's have some music now. So the first piece on the program, inspired by astrology, is called Sun in Virgo, and it's by Perry Maurer, who her sun sign is in Virgo. I think
yes, indeed,
it's the inspiration for that piece. It's for solo clarinet, and we're going to hear Ford Forkurian perform. music by Perry Maurer, who is here today in the audience, which is always exciting to have the composer present. A lot of exciting things about focusing on music by living composers. They can come, which is really great. Very few of them are white guys in wigs, which is really cool, too. We like that a lot. So the piece was called Sun in Virgo, and we heard Ford Forkurian performing. We're going to have a lot more music on the program tonight, and it's all really, really wonderful. So we're heading towards a piece by Mark Melitz that's called Zodiac, and the piece in its entirety, we're going to hear an excerpt of it tonight, but in its entirety, it is 12 short movements. I think the number 12 is not surprising to anybody here on stage. They're all the different sun signs. So I think it's a great place for us to move in our conversation now. One of the things we were talking about right before Ford performed, you only have a little bit of information if you know somebody's sun sign. So as I was reading about astrology to prepare for the show, I was really pretty stunned and overwhelmed at how complex it is, which I'm sorry, talking to the two of you. But there's really an awful lot of factors. So what else besides a sun sign is affecting somebody's chart?
Well, many things. The sun, as we look at a birth chart, we look at basically a snapshot of the sky at the time you were born, and the sun is actually just one small part of it all. You also have a moon sign that speaks about your emotional body. You have a Mars and Venus sign that speak about your passion signature, and many generational planets that speak about the soul of your generation, the zeitgeist there. So, but the funny thing is, people walk around saying, I'm a Gemini or I'm an Aries, but the truth is, you all have each zodiac sign within you somewhere. So it's really a misnomer to say I am just one sign.
You see those charts though, like visually, and they show because there's like the cradle or the this or the that, and they have the planets, and sometimes some of the houses or the things on the chart are completely empty, but you're still saying that there's still some aspect.
Yeah, I mean, even if you have an empty 7th house or 5th house, that doesn't mean that you can have an empty love life or no kids or anything like that. There's a planet that's in charge of every sector of your chart. Mm-hmm. And so that planet will give us more information, or give an astrologer or someone just looking at their chart who learns astrology more information about themselves in that area of their lives.
And the houses, these are actually like sectors of space through which the planets
that are divided
travel.
by 12, yes.
Okay, from the perspective of Earth.
Correct.
Okay. And I mean, this is a really old concept. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's been with us for at least 2,100 years in this form. But then, of course, earlier than that, there were omens that were selected and chosen from the heavens and then delineated from even Babylonian times and before.
You pulled up a chart?
I did.
Of the moment?
You
I wish
caught
you
me.
could put it up on the screen.
Yeah, I can send it to you. Well, I just pulled up two charts actually. Seth, I pulled up your chart, and also.
Oh, you have info on me. Uh-oh.
Wow.
It's turning into Jerry Springer here.
Okay, here we go.
Is this your child?
Where's his son?
Well, actually, this is a great time to bring up the concept of sun, moon, and rising.
Okay.
So Seth, okay, hold on one second. Actually, wait a minute. Can you, just want to make sure this is totally right. Can you confirm your month of birth? Yes. Okay, November 24th?
Yep.
Okay, so what we have is a Sagittarius sun, a Gemini rising, and an Aquarius moon. Now, we call that the Grand Trinity in astrology.
That sounds cool. Is that cool?
Well, the Grand Trinity is not, I mean, it's not
Yeah,
just because, we're looking at the sun, the moon, and the rising sign. And the rising sign is what sign was coming above the horizon when you were born.
And to put that in context too, I see it as like the sun sign is pretty much what you came here to do on the planet, your main archetype, your role. The rising sign would be like the how, the vehicle, how you do the job of your sun sign. And then the moon sign, I see as your core, your emotions, and what you really need to thrive in life, what will really satisfy your soul. So the thing that I thought was really interesting about you is that you are all fire and air. And fire is the energy of passion and inspiration. Creativity, yeah. Sun being in Sagittarius, the sign of the great adventure explorer. Does that feel like your archetype?
Yeah, that's me. I was just rock climbing last night, No, I'm kidding.
I was about to say, for real?
No, I'm not an outdoorsy type. I'm adventurous in other ways.
Right.
You are. I mean, doing this is adventurous, I think.
Right, and you have a lot of air, so you're communicating. You're interested in communicating and sharing.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, the
and
way
thought.
exactly. I mean, the way he does his Sagittarius sun sign through Gemini rising,
Right.
through the vehicle of air, you're creating these wonderful events where people can commune and share, connect. So through the Gemini lens.
So again, I mean, this is through no fault of my own how things were set in the heavens when I was born. I mean, if I had taken a couple of days longer, I would be a totally different person. Is that true?
If you'd taken a few minutes longer,
Okay.
it might reflect a different person.
That's interesting.
And that's, the rising sign, absolutely.
Right.
And then the moon sign also, Aquarius moon. What do you think of that, Sam?
Well, I think that's very strongly interested in bringing together people who are on the perimeter, who in some way function out of the view of what quote unquote might be deemed the mainstream or the norm. That might also describe you at some point in your life, feeling like on the outside and wanting to kind of deal with that and having some,
4th grade.
some idea of feeling out there.
Through college.
You might remember the X-Files. It's like, it's out there. I mean, that's probably how Seth has felt, like in a sense. So, yeah.
We're going to do this for each of you, too, by the way.
I might want to add one more thing to that about the Aquarius moon. There also can be this extremely humanitarian quality where your desire emotionally is to help other people and in some way to give back. So.
Yeah, I've definitely wasted too much time with that. That's definitely. I'm kidding.
Too much about yourself, huh? Okay. That's also the deference of that moon in Aquarius, too.
So, okay, this is how the planets and everything were when I was born. But it's still, the configurations of the planets still affect me and everyone throughout our lives. Is that correct? It's not like this is just a snapshot and, there you go for hopefully 90 years.
Astrology does have the challenge of a grammar problem, right? And one of the grammatical issues that I think we as astrologers struggle with is that when we say, because we do say effects, right? But is that literal? And I don't think, if I were to say it out loud, or even if a client were to ask me, like, do you believe it's literally affecting me? No. What I think it's describing the set circumstances and situations related to your character that you kind of give off, So I think in terms, we have to look at astrology as more signaling something rather than determining it. That's how I look at it.
But there's also, for my given astrological makeup, like who I am as a human being, there are days or times of any given year that are like, I should stay in bed probably, right?
Well, I would say when usually people come to probably me or Sam or any astrologer, they're usually going through one of those times where it's like, and astrologically we call that sometimes a Pluto transit or something like
Saturn
that.
transit.
Saturn transit, exactly. So I look at it like this. You have your natal chart always, which is akin to the terrain. If you imagine an ecosystem, you can think of the desert or the fjords. Some unique ecosystem is your chart. The transits are what's going on any random day in the sky, and we can have a lot of planets in water signs. And if you have a lot of water in your chart, you might want to just stay in bed. That can feel like a downpour. But let's say you have a lot of air and you're like, wow, this is refreshing, all of this water. The transits are the weather. It's raining, it's snowing, it's always changing. Every day is different. And as astrologers, I think, a lot of people come to us, they're trying to understand what's going on in their life. And what we do is pretty much, we take the zoom lens way out and we give these transits meaning. We speak about the implications of them. And often the person sitting there will feel a bit relieved because there's some explanation as well. But again, as Sam said, it's not like the planets are making you do things.
Right. And I think embedded in your question is like how much is predetermined by our chart? Like, what about free will? Well, free will is kind of like on shaky ground right now, even from neuroscientists, right? So let's put that out there. But what I like to say is that fate has two arms, right? And one of them is your own. So I think what we're talking about with a chart is a description of what are the given circumstances that you were born with, and then it's your consciousness and how you're going to perceive things that can change what you do with that.
All right, let's return to this conversation in a moment. We're getting some heavy stuff. I love free will. We're going to get into that. We're going to hear some music now by Mark Mellitz. This is 4 movements from the piece Zodiac, and we are going to hear Taurus, Aries, Cancer, and Leo. Our performer for these pieces is Peter Ferry, who is the guy for whom they were written. So I got the guy. This is the guy right here. Here's Peter Ferry to perform the music of Mark Mellitz. Hang tight, Peter. Don't go anywhere. It's Peter Ferry performing music of Mark Mellitz. So, Peter, do you know much about Mark's inspiration for these pieces? Well, obviously, the Zodiac, but that was a kind of an odd take on Leo, isn't it? I mean, I think of Leo as being outgoing, expansive, and it was kind of more introverted.
It is. He talks about this Leo movement as trying to show a softer, calmer side of the lion that is Leo. And for all of these movements, there's it's so hard for me as someone who doesn't know so much about horoscope signs to sort out the things that are more traditional kind of horoscope sign characteristics for sun signs, or for me as I interpret them, and I imagine for Mark or for anyone else, I associate the movements and their different horoscope signs with people I know who have those horoscope signs. I can never play the Scorpio movement and not think of my big brother. And the Cancer movement is one, as a Cancer, that I feel a connection to. I think because I'm in part looking for a connection, and I've become so invested in the movement and all its little details.
And that kind of like almost boogie woogie pattern in the you can really picture a crab kind of moving around. I mean, to me, that's what it sounded like.
Yeah, and Mark talks about that movement too as the same way a crab moves sideways, and the way it kind of gets around is irregular. The piece is a little bit of a palindrome, that Cancer movement, and it kind of moves this way, and then it just comes right back to where it was before.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice. That's a great idea musically. So, and you're doing something with ringtones with this project?
yeah. There's all of these different movements have such a distilled and specific musical character that I'm doing a project to record not only this whole piece, but to make ringtones out of each of the movements. So some of the ones that we don't have time to play today, but I can give you a little hint of the ringtones, is the Virgo movement. Or, let's see, Gemini. Or Pisces is another one we won't have time to play. And for this one, Mark Mellitz, the composer, puts at the beginning, superfly, superfish, superflying fish. It's a really swift movement. And all of these work so well on marimba, in part, I think, because we have the marimba in our ear as the text and ringtone sound, mainly because of But I'm working on recording these and getting these out. If you're interested to get those, I've set up an easy way. If you, on your phone or on your email, send any message to zodiaclisten@gmail.com. I've set it up so it'll automatically send you back news on this as it comes out. And in the meantime, a link to a special private video from the making of this piece, from Mark coming over to my studio and showing me drafts and a first-hand look at that collaboration back and forth. So that's zodiaclisten@gmail.com is an easy way to get that stuff. It could be blank. You can send me a note. Yeah.
All right, prepare to get a lot of emails.
Yeah.
It's a very cool project. So we'll hear more with Peter in a little bit here. Going to continue our conversation. If you don't mind returning the mic. Yeah. So we were talking about free will. Ooh, what a wonderful concept. And I love what you said about neuroscientists, because I'm a big fan of Kurt Vonnegut, and a lot of his fiction is really, there is no free will. That we're the slaves of our neurochemical makeup and really have no other things that we can do. And I could walk off the stage right now and just go take the train to Long Island, and I don't know why I would do that, but in theory I could. I'm going to. but anyway, how does this all relate to astrology? I mean, how do you think about the concept of will in relation to astrology?
Well, yeah, again, it's a misnomer. I mean, it's almost as if we are working to free the will. But first of all, it's not as free as we think, right? We back to the metaphor with ecosystems. We each have our unique terrain. Like if your terrain is all like yours is fire and air, you can't be water and earth. So you work with what you have. If somebody's, or you can look at it even like a carpet, a tapestry. And this tapestry might be one person's pattern, and you can't turn that into a geometric modern pattern. So I find astrology is really about knowing yourself and committing to that. And I think sure, there's many things we all can try, but there's certain things that we all will naturally be magicians in, and other ones that we won't. We can, slave away at for 20 years, and it'll still be somewhat challenging. So I do feel like we do best focusing on what we came here to do and knowing that. So yeah, perhaps it's not as free as we think. Although we can have fun with it, we can try all kinds of things.
I'm going to stretch that comparison to the neurochemical idea. And I mean, so if you're doing things you're not good at, or I mean, as you're developing different skills, you actually develop new neural pathways.
Right.
And that's a really interesting thing. Is there a similar idea in astrology that I mean, we have all 12 signs within us. I mean, could I develop more of my Taurus?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so one way in which astrologers look at that is that we can progress your chart. One way to do that is called secondary progressions, where we would imagine that a certain number of days after you were born, literally, like if you were born November 22nd, 1967, we could count 52 days after you were born as symbolic of 52 years of life. And the positions of the planets will be different. And by virtue of that, that gives us an idea of what other things you may be dealing with. That doesn't mean that you're no longer the sign you were born or the signs that you were born, as much as other things have come into the room. Like this space has been here for a long time, but it's been reconfigured in different ways, even though the blueprint and the layout of it has been consistently the same in terms of like the exit signs perhaps, and where things are in terms of particular walls. But what's on those walls, what's added, that can change. And that's what astrology can do, to look at what neural pathways that have opened up astrologically.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
I was just thinking on that note, you can think of like the seed of an oak tree, which has the DNA baked into it, and the sort of timed release that's there. So it's going through these different learning experiences, different stages of gestation. And each one is how we progress that cycle that Sam was talking about, 52 days, 52 years. So yes, we do. I mean, I once did a workshop on epigenetics and astrology, and find that really interesting, how we can extend in new ways beyond our chart, for sure.
How do professional astrologers feel about the proliferation of apps? I mean, you can get your horoscope, you can get all this stuff on an app.
Why don't you talk on that first?
Is it a contentious question?
I actually think it's a great thing. I am all for it. I know it's sort of like a contentious topic in the astrology community. I find, sure, when anything becomes popular, certain people are going to do it right. Certain ones will gloss over important things, and they won't be done right. I mean, there's all kinds of. We just have to accept that as anything becomes popular. And I think that somebody who actually wants to get a reading, they're not going to get an astrological reading from somebody who's just doing memes, on astrology. They're going to do their research. And I do think the general population is so much more savvy. I remember when I first started studying seriously in the early 2000s, and I would be embarrassed to say I was an astrologer at a party, because people would think hippie, smoky couches. I mean, and astrology is absolutely going through this kind of rebrand now, that you can be any kind of person, you can be any color, any race, come from any background, and you can be an astrologer. It's really, apps have democratized it, and they've given everybody way beyond a base level sun sign.
I was on a panel with a couple of journalists a few years back, and they were talking about blogging. And he was saying, well, I mean, I'm a professional writer. I spent my whole life doing it. This is what I do. Would you go into a restaurant and you want some rando to cook your food? No, you want a chef. I mean, do you feel the same way, more or less? I mean, you spend an awful lot of time doing this. It's a complex science. And, certainly, I mean, I guess it depends on what people want, too, like you're saying. I mean, some people just want a quick horoscope. It's fun for them. But for people who delve in deeper, they should absolutely go deeper than an app.
Well, yeah, I think that's the thing. I think they should be willing to look beyond just what's on their phone. And like my problem with apps is that sometimes the information can be wrong. I'm a professional astrologer, and I downloaded, I won't say the app, I don't want to get in trouble with anybody, but I downloaded the app and put in my information in time. It was all wrong. So I'm like, well, I mean, like, I know my chart, and what you're saying is not my chart. What's going on? So I did call the company and talk to the company, uh, and they said they would, fix it and work on doing something better. But I think the general public doesn't know. And I think that's the key thing, is to kind of do due diligence. And I don't think anything can supplant a living being.
So you know where the planets are in any given moment. Is that accurate to say?
I don't know about that. What do
Do you know where the planets
Any
are right
given
now?
moment? No, I don't know if it's any
I
given moment.
mean, I can't tell you the exact degrees, but the signs.
Yeah, maybe the signs, but sometimes I unplug too. Sometimes I don't know where the moon is. I used to have a guy who would call me randomly, literally, and be like, "Where is the moon?"
Well,
And I'm
tonight's
like,
He's out here, actually. He's in the
right
audience.
He called me on Thanksgiving, and I was like, "In the sky."
Yeah, right. I'm
Don't
eating.
call me.
maybe this is a good time to talk about the sky tonight.
Yeah,
Right,
I was
yeah.
curious. We're launching a new venture here.
Yeah.
All throughout history, right? People have consulted the skies if they're launching something new. So how are the stars my friends? Or
Yeah,
do
you
I
got
have
a
to take
new
them out
moon.
back
You
tonight
picked it
and
up.
beat
You
'em up?
picked it. You picked on the day of or night of a new moon, right?
It's
so that's really,
perfect.
it's really perfect. I was like, did you have an astrologer pick this for you?
And not
No, I chose it out of 4 dates. I was like, that one.
Okay.
but not only is it a new moon, it's a new moon in the sign of Pisces, the sign that rules music and the arts, beauty,
What?
transcendence, and here you are with a musical venture.
With a Venus in Pisces, no less.
Oh
right?
yeah,
So
That's
Well,
just a little
Venus
flavor
is
of
She's an Aries. She moved, right?
yeah.
just to kind of sex it up, or what
Yeah,
does
well,
the Venus add
Venus
to
But
it?
is
you
in
also
Aries, yeah,
in Aries,
absolutely,
right? But
yeah.
you also have Neptune. The moon is going to go to Neptune, and so that also creates more of like a mystique and mysteriousness. So that's
All
good.
right, great.
There's
All right.
no better
I'm
time
very
to launch
pleased.
something than a new moon. So
Right.
well done.
And you did it.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm very happy to hear that. Let's have some more music. So we're going to bring Peter Ferry back. He's going to perform 4 more pieces by
Cool.
Mark Mellitz. Yeah, this time around we're going to hear Libra, Capricorn, Sagittarius, and give it to me, Scorpio, your brother.
All right.
All right, big hand for Peter Ferry. It's Peter Ferry performing music of Mark Mellitz. Let's go ahead and bring the quartet on the stage. Where is Oso Quartet? Let's just bring them out and get them on the stage so we can be on time. All right, I think they're tuning. They hear me. Okay, so the next piece is music by Sufjan Stevens. It's from an album that is completely, as far as I know, different from his other music. It's called Enjoy Your Rabbit. And the quartet that we're going to hear, Oso Quartet, they commissioned a lot of great composers to arrange these pieces. The pieces are electronica. Those of us who are in the house heard a lot of them before the show tonight. And they're inspired by the Chinese zodiac. Can Rebecca or Sam, one of you in about a minute, just tell me how different is the Chinese zodiac from ours, the Western zodiac?
It's extremely different.
Very.
I mean, you can't even compare it. Every sign in the Chinese zodiac takes a year, and every sign in the Western zodiac is about a month. So I don't really think they have much to do with each other. But I mean, you can, of course, combine them. You can say, well, you are a Scorpio snake or a Virgo ox. They can actually work seamlessly together, but they don't have much to do with each other. And that's sort of the beauty of astrology, that all over the planet, cultures basically channeled their own way of relating the heavenly bodies to Earth.
So yeah, I mean, a different culture will have the same concept that the planets affect us, but they interpret it differently.
Or even conceive of it differently. I mean, the Chinese zodiac, it's not just based on the positions of planets per se. It actually centers on one main planet, which is Jupiter, actually. And Jupiter takes about 12 years to go and complete a cycle through each sign. And so it's a similar idea with the Mushu, which is the actual name for the animals in the Chinese zodiac.
Great. All right, let's hear some music. So we're going to hear 4 of these pieces now. We're going to hear Enjoy Your Rabbit, arranged by Michael Atkinson. We're going to hear Year of the Rooster, arranged by Gabriel Kahane. And then we're going to hear Year of the Horse, arranged by Rob Moose. And then we're going to hear Year of the Boar, also arranged by Michael Atkinson. These are all songs by Sufjan Stevens that sound completely different. I mean, these are really, really creative arrangements to do it for string quartet. So let's hear the Oso String Quartet now perform these 4 selections from Sufjan Stevens. Oso Quartet, big hand.
Wow.
We heard Monica Davis and Maria Im, violins, Jillian Gallagher, viola, and we heard Maria Jeffers on cello. It's music by Sufjan Stevens from his album originally called Enjoy Your Rabbit. And, well, we have a couple of minutes. Maria, can I put you on the spot here? So you guys commissioned composers to arrange these.
Yes. Originally, it was just Mike Atkinson because Bryce Dessner from the National has a Music Now Festival in Cincinnati, and he said, "Hey, Sufjan, how about you arrange these for string quartet? How about Mike Atkinson does it?" And so Mike Atkinson did the first 4, and then Asthmatic Kitty loved it, and we just asked some arranger-composer friends, and here they all are.
And Asthmatic Kitty, that's Sufjan Stevens' label.
Right.
Okay. I love this album. Your renditions of these pieces, I've known about it for a really long time. It was such a treat to sit right here and hear it live. Where can people find this album if they're interested?
Oh, all around.
Everywhere.
Any-
So
I
your
don't know,
guys'
the internet?
version is called Run Rabbit Run.
Right. ours
Sufjan
is
Stevens is Enjoy Your Rabbit.
Right, and ours is Run Rabbit Run.
Run Rabbit Run. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. It was
Sure.
really phenomenal.
Thank you.
All right, we're at the end of our program here. A big hand, please, for my guests, Rebecca Gordon and Samuel F. Reynolds.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
I don't know how you would spend your Sunday night better than this. I mean, you know, conversation about fascinating topics paired with amazing music. This is where it's at. So, if you're here, good for you. If you're watching at home, great. Go to our YouTube, find the Relevant Tones channel on YouTube, subscribe to it so you know about future episodes. Like us on Facebook. Go to relevanttones.com. Think about Relevant Tones every single day.
Every minute.
Every minute. Yeah, your astrological overlord, and I'm asking you to do that. I want to thank a few people. Caesar Papetti for the marimba rental. That was a huge thing to get that in here. Of course, our performers, Ford Forkurian playing Perry Maurer, and Peter Ferry playing Mark Mellitz, and Oso playing the music of Sufjan Stevens, arranged by a lot of people. Won't go into all of that. I want to thank the team at Caveat. This is a fantastic venue. If you don't know it, check out caveat.nyc. And thanks so much to Caveat. I'm Seth Bosted for Relevant Tones. Hope you'll join us for a future episode.